A little over a year ago, I made a video essay on why the majority of arguments against these AI technologies, from image generators to text generators, are generally bad arguments. I don't want to rehash that same material, but I think that I still stand by most of the arguments I made. Specifically, the fact that making digital copies of things is still a very strange area of our technological world, especially as it pertains to copyright. I want to make sure people understand that this does not mean that I support all of these technologies and that the non-consensual use of any old image or text as training data. I also understand the way it feels to find out that one of these platforms has used your work as training data. It happened to me and my own artwork. What I am saying is that the arguments of theft or copyright infringement will not do much to stop or augment the tech as it emerges because of the unique nature of how these programs work. I say this because the same arguments have been used against all sorts of forms of technological innovation in the past, and they've failed to do much to stop that same technological innovation. This is going to be a hard gray area to navigate. It's why I do not have much hope for stopping this sort of activity by corporate entities. These arguments might limit the way in which data sets are constructed, but that's probably it. Even still, it might not even do that because inevitably, not all of these companies will abide by the rules and laws of the United States or other developed nations. But I do not want to retread that ground so much as I want to put forward an argument against the use of these various applications and tools that loosely fall under the banner of artificial intelligence. This won't be an argument against their existence or an argument that vilifies the folks who have made these technologies. Why not, you might ask? Well, let's think of another similar technology. There are plenty of reasons why you should limit your smartphone usage and screen time. Almost all of those arguments stem from one common dilemma. Our technology is changing us and changing the way we interact with our environment. Oftentimes this is good. Gone are the days of wasting gasoline as we look through physical maps we've pulled from the glove compartment, all the while fueling our frustration, wasting time and gasoline. We solve that problem in the form of GPS mapping, which is conveniently accessible on our smartphones. Of course, this has led to tons of other unintended consequences. This is what I mean. I would never argue that the smartphone is bad in and of itself. I would argue it has some very negative unintended consequences. This means each user needs to be considerate and intentional about how they use their smartphone. I believe this is the best way to approach AI technology as well. We do not know what all of the unintended consequences of this technology will be. Most importantly, we do not know what the consequences will be for children and young adults who may have uninhibited access to these tools. In short, the best argument against the use of AI is that it drastically changes the way human beings approach creative production. By the way, I'm speculating here, but I think previous automotive technology can give us some clues about what sorts of consequences there might be. I think it will change the way in which we approach creativity in such a drastic manner that it will have huge negative consequences. Furthermore, I think the majority of the negative consequences will largely impact individuals, and the majority of positive consequences will largely impact commercial entities. To begin my argument, I want to talk about the creative process, because that is what generative AI is automating to some extent. But it is not automating the entire process, at least not yet. The simplest way to describe the creative process is to talk about these 4 steps: exploration, refinement, critiquing or testing, and cycling. I'm pulling this from the way the folks at IDEO have defined design thinking. If you look this up, you'll see all kinds of remixes and iterations of the process of design thinking that IDEO originally laid out. Sometimes you'll see 5 steps, sometimes you'll see 6, and I'm pretty sure I remember seeing one with like over 9 steps. Regardless of how nuanced and granular you want to be, every creative endeavor engages with the first step of this creative process. And every single serious creative endeavor, that is ones that go beyond doing something as a personal endeavor or a hobby, engages with all 4. Let me explain these steps. First, exploration. It's often thought of as the brainstorming session. Throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. Especially in the realm of design, this is where we dream big and try to think of as many solutions. In the realm of art making, this is where we doodle and play without a specific goal in mind. This is where new and novel combinations of things are made. Second, there's refinement. Refining is where the individual or team of creatives work to perfect whatever was discovered in the exploration stage. This is mostly done through editing or curating, that is, separating the wheat from the chaff, sifting through all the things made during exploration to pull out the diamonds in the rough and give them nice, wonderful facets. This is the stage where reality sets in. Yes, we could make a 1,000-foot tall poster, but where do we display it? We refine the novel ideas into the realistic and the possible. Third, there's critiquing. This is where the product of the two previous steps is viewed by outsiders. This takes many forms: classroom critiques, showing it to your parents, reading a review in the New York Times. Creatives subject their work to an audience in order to see how they respond. Finally, we have the cycling stage, or you might think of this as analyzing. This is where we take a look at the feedback we receive from the critique or the test, and we decide what to do next. It's where we cycle the feedback back into the creative process. Maybe it means going back to the drawing board of exploration, or perhaps we jump straight to refinement and we just continue tinkering with a subtle few little details. This is also where we wonder, have we reached the pinnacle of success? Is there any way we can actually improve whatever this is? Or is it finished? Is it time to move on? You can add in steps, you can skip back and forth, and honestly, most of us start refining in the middle of the exploration stage. The amount of times you start a drawing and just think, God, this is terrible. Why did I make that choice? That's a refinement. So it's certainly not a clean process that works like a machine. It's a back and forth dance that often seems chaotic and is hard to describe with just these steps. But these steps work as general windows into what a human being does when they're trying to be creative. So regardless of any individual's creative habits, all creatives will do the majority of these steps to some degree to create something. Different creatives will emphasize different aspects as the most important, and some try to skip certain steps, but at its core, this process is how we make things from plungers to paintings and from stories to essays. So how does AI as a tool affect the creative process? Technology has drastically impacted our creative process over the last millennia. Hatters, as in like the Mad Hatter, no longer go mad from mercury poisoning, as we've automated spraying glue. As in they used to put mercury in their mouths and spit it out in order to get a fine mist. Now we have spray bottles, and obviously we don't use mercury anymore. Painters now spend more time with their canvases now that they don't need to make their own paint. And 3D printers have reduced the time it takes for a prototype to get from the brainstorming exploration phase to the critical test with a focus group. I would never argue that technological innovation is bad because it impacts the creative process. Rather, I want to look at how does this technology impact the creative process. AI will interact with the process differently from most innovations in the past. Take how Grammarly used to work. You would write a sentence and it would then use AI to suggest changes, specifically changes in grammar. This is clearly a refinement tool. The writer generates the exploratory sentence, the computer refines the statement to be better written and reflect the habits and customs that it detects through data analyzation of all kinds of different styles of writing. Or take how live notes and voice transcription can work. You can have an AI transcribe the feedback that a group of focus testers gives during a conversation about a product. And now you can do all kinds of data analysis across tests and across huge audiences. You can do word searches on those transcripts. You can use it in a manner that helps you better analyze and better cycle that feedback into your creative process. Both of these examples show technologies impacting the creative process in different ways. I'm not worried about those parts, because they are largely regarding how a creative needs to make the work accessible and recognizable for an audience. Put another way, they impact how creators tame their unique explorations so that they conform more to what an audience expects and what an audience might recognize. Generative AI doesn't impact the last three steps. It impacts the first step, that is the exploration step. And of course, my question is, what kind of consequences, good or bad, could there be from this? Let's start with the good. On the one hand, This tech obviously makes difficult skills far more accessible. This is why I think it will largely benefit commercial companies. I've heard many writers talk about the joy they've had in being able to see characters and scenes come to life in front of them in a manner that they never could have afforded to pay an artist to make. And platforms like Midjourney or dall-e do it in seconds. For many, this will be a great way to increase the impact of largely verbal creative practice, with visuals and music in a way that will empower those individuals. It will also speed up productivity, as the exploration stage is often the longest, the most convoluted, and the biggest barrier for entry into most creative fields. By and large, when a company is hiring a creative, they're hiring a person who actually knows how to navigate this practice, not someone who just knows how to use Photoshop. It's someone who knows how to use it in an effective manner to generate new ideas and to refine things so that audiences respond positively to them. Those are the real skills that matter. In the short run, more folks will start making things because now they can. But there's a dark side to this as well. First of all, corporations will be able to undercut wages and make things way more cheaply. Now, this might have positive benefits to the consumer in the long run. Perhaps movie tickets will finally go down in my lifetime. I doubt it. But I think there's lots of other bad consequences. Specifically, most people who are not well practiced in creative production quickly run out of steam. As in, they don't have many ideas. And trust me, I'm not trying to be a jerk here. I don't have many ideas either. That's why I engage in the creative process. Most people will sit down and they'll generate a cat or an anime character or a few silly poems, but they don't actually use it for much more than that. In fact, this gets at the core of my argument. Practicing the creative process actually makes us more creative as individuals. Let me give some anecdotal evidence here. I teach a design class every semester, and I start that class with a strange exercise that asks students to follow simple directions to make their first compositions. I do this for several reasons, but there is an interesting phenomena that occurs. The fourth instruction I give students is to draw a line. That's it. That's all I say. They have a piece of paper in front of them, and they can draw any sort of line they want, and this is what they all draw. As in, a few weeks ago I did this, and 15 out of 17 students drew a straight line about 2.5 inches long. I've taught this class over 40 times, and multiple times I've had classes where not a single student draws a curved line. In all my times teaching, I've only ever had one student draw an S curve, even though occasionally I get a few arcs. Now, this is not an empirical study, but there are many studies that have demonstrated the same thing. That is, that humans don't have a fountain of ideas just sitting at the tip of their fingers waiting to be expressed. Rather, we need a process of thought and exploration in order to find interesting new ideas. In the realm of psychology and neuroscience, this is spoken of most by those who are studying the flow state. In order to enter the flow state with a given tool, a guitar, a brush, etc., you have to reach a stage of mastery where the left hemisphere of the brain is handling the details of the exploration, while the right hemisphere is looking ahead. If you're awkwardly learning a tool, then your right hemisphere is not able to look ahead and predict things and see the general vicinity and the kind of what is going on. Instead, you're focusing on every tiny detail with your left hemisphere, and you're not seeing the bigger picture. The majority of concentration is given to looking rather than thinking about the thing that's being done when you're in a flow state. This mastery is built through actually practicing the exploration phase. If I need to make a new and amazing drawing of a cat, I need to generate tons of ideas that I'm not satisfied with. This means cliche ideas, copies of old ideas, bad combinations of new ideas with stupid things like cats with cactus hands. This is how a new style is found. It's in fact found because creatives are not trying to realize an idea already in their mind, they're trying to find something new. The exploration stage of the creative process is the most individually unique and challenging stage. It's where we all approach the same task at hand, and yet we all diverge immediately. Some folks start drawing, some start dancing, some start playing with sand, and some start making drawings with water. Over and over, ideas are generated, and the majority of them get thrown out. This is what art school is actually teaching, by the way, how to iterate over and over and how to generate ideas. So what might happen if you can imagine a cat with cactus paws and the machine just plops it fully formed in front of you? Are you going to keep trying? Are you going to keep exploring? Are you even going to try to refine the parameters for the AI to see what else you can find? I'm afraid that we will begin to think of creativity as merely manifesting what we've already thought of, rather than a process of discovery, which to me is deeply inhuman or unhuman. We're automating a part of us that is so unique it surprises me that we would even desire this tool. I understand why it's nice to have help refining. Editors have been doing this for writers for a long time. But imagine an editor asking a writer, "What kind of book would you like to write?" Then the writer says, "A book about a medieval knight, but his weapon is a revolver." The editor then hands the author the tome and says, "How's this?" The author is now the editor. Instead of finding an original idea through the process of writing, the author is now checking the work of another in order to see if it's satisfactory. So what should an individual do? This is a powerful tool. Its opportunities are extremely tempting. I would say, be careful, honestly. Realize the temptation this tool brings with it. Don't let go of your exploration process. Dedicate yourself to learn how to be creative. I'm in the midst of Ian McGilchrist's The Master and His Emissary, and I have to say his argument that we are a left-brain dominated culture is harrowing. I've seen this in my students, and I argued for it in my last video essay. We have, by and large, caused our imaginations to atrophy. We are now less capable of imaginative thought, which has far more consequences than not being able to paint a picture. It changes our attention spans, it makes it difficult to read others' emotions, and of course, it makes art boring and cliché. And for God's sake, stop talking to the machines like it's a human. Honestly, why does it speak to you like a human? Imagine making a huge library that could tell you any information you wanted and where it was found and how it's connected with all kinds of other bodies of knowledge. But you wanted to make sure it spoke to you in a calm, soothing voice instead of just giving you information. And in fact, it asked you how your day was. Why would you want it to be like that? If not, to lull you into a false notion about the machine. I do think there will be great ways that these tools can be used by especially trained creatives, practiced creatives in exploration, so that it can help their own exploration. There will be ways it can generate odd combinations of ideas that we would not easily have imagined. But don't stop there. Don't let it turn you into the editor of a book when you could have been the author. And this is where my fears generally lie, with the children today who perhaps don't ever learn to begin drawing, but instead just immediately turn to dall-e or Midjourney whenever they have some silly idea. I hope that children today will see the value in authoring their own works by the time they are old. So that's the best argument I have. The best argument against AI is that you're asking the machine to automate your own imagination and creativity. I guess good luck if that's the path you want to go down.